Welcome back to Deal Nation. On the show today, we've got the CEO and co-founder of DataFlik, Ty Garrett. Ty, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're for as far as data goes and the insights about, what's working now, what's coming up in the future. You're my go-to or one of my go-tos in the data space. So I'm really excited to kind of hear your thoughts on this. Um, First of all, just how you doing? You good?
I'm great, man. Busy. A lot of things changing as we get on into the next year coming up. So just trying to stay keep my head on the swivel, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely excited to get into what you guys have coming up and get some of your thoughts on where the REI industry is headed. But let's take a step back to start and give everybody a little bit of insight about how you got started in REI, what your journey was to co-founder of DataFlik.
Yeah. So I got started back in 2018, and I first got into Fortune Builders, which is a big educational company. They're not quite as prevalent as they used to be, but that was where I got started. And that kind of like opened all the doors to everything that was possible. And back in like 2018, I got into wholesaling. Did that for about a year and a half and got some deals, got quick wins, things like that, but realized how fragmented like the marketing space was and specifically the data space. So we founded DataFlik back in March of 2020. And the way that we got started in it was we partnered with the investors that obviously invested into DataFlik, and they had a pretty sizable real estate company themselves. And we were testing like everything that is basically known as DataFlik today in their business. And we did that for about a year and a half. So from March of 2020, like right when the pandemic started, all the way until September of 2021, we were just in complete R&D. So we were like testing all the new models that we worked on and like all the new workflows and just seeing like how well it performed in a like real life business. And once we felt like that was in a good place, we had our go to market in September of 21 and learned a lot along the way. And ever since then, I think we're on like model version like 19 for
Wow.
perspective. So we've changed a lot. We've burned a lot of things to the ground and kind of rebuilt them. But yeah, it's been super good. And we started out just into data. Now we're getting more into like digital marketing a little bit and a lot of more like market analytics and things like that that you'd want to know just when you're launching a market. And yeah, we also have a realtor product that's coming out now. So we're getting a little bit into different industries and things like that. And yeah, it's been an awesome journey.
Yeah, I think we have kind of a shared goal in that, in which the way that I always phrase it with the launch community is, for every 1,000 names that you have available that match a distressed profile, we want to help you identify every single available deal within those 1,000 names. So you
Yeah.
have zero wasted calories and the maxed out profit structure from that 1,000 names. And I think it's a kind of a shared goal, right? Like you guys are testing and adding in, like you said, even adding in, which we'll get into some of the different marketing funnels and ways that you can activate that data in the best possible way to capture every deal out of that 1,000 names.
Yeah, so like we have a thing that we call like efficiency. So we're trying to figure out, okay, so how many deals are happening in a county or a market, and then how many records would be on our list, and then based on all of our historical data, how many basically records do you have to market to get in front of an opportunity, and then you can do a lot of things that's like reverse engineering, what your marketing needs to be, how many opportunities equals a deal for you, and you can do a lot more reverse engineering that way. And I think it's crazy like how many people have no idea what their market actually like looks like. They just kind of blindly launch it. And we've found that doesn't work the best. And it's super bad about
Yeah.
setting expectations and kind of like reverse engineering goals and all that good stuff.
Yeah, something we talk about a lot at launch is A/B testing, right?
Yeah.
And obviously you need data to do that, but a surprising number of people aren't actually testing within their market to see what their sweet spot is in that market. So there are some people that find that within a specific market, they're just, or at least for a period of time, their probate lists and pre-inheritance lists are just doing really, really well. There are some people that find that, like, 60, 70% of their deals come from out-of-state landlords who own 3 properties or less, right? Because they've done the metrics and they know that just those conversations go really, really easy for them and they get deals out of them. And so it gives them a place to concentrate, and it gives them a place to like work with someone like yourselves to figure out where those data profiles are. But there are also a huge number of people that will text Atlanta, will text Phoenix, will text Tampa, and there's no iterative testing in between, so they never really know what their sweet spot is. They get a deal on occasion. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the things that is which I think you agree you have to be careful with, is that how much marketing do you have to do to tee up an opportunity? There's a lot of X factors that go into that, right? Like if you're specifically sourcing data that is that out of state landlord who has 3 properties or less, and that's your sweet spot, your message to conversation or message to discovery ratio is going to be much, much lower than if you're texting Atlanta or calling
100%.
Atlanta.
So when you guys are doing like your done for you service as an example, are you guys seeing a lot of people have more success in kind of like the secondary markets and like tertiary markets? And I'm thinking more from like an ROI perspective, because we see a lot of people that are using us today, like they may get less opportunities in those like secondary and tertiary markets, especially if they're just doing wholesaling, but their ROI for just like how much they're spending to how many deals they're getting back and revenue, generally speaking, is so much higher than like Atlanta these days.
Yeah.
Just because it's so much harder to get deals, and like when you do, it took a lot of marketing efforts and dollars to actually get that deal.
Yeah, so it is more effective. And for everyone listening, as in where we have Launch Control has a done for you service called Launch Leads, where we run all of the text engagement and just hand over discovery calls when the seller's ready to have a conversation. So as part of that process, yeah, some of the investors that we work with are in like secondary, tertiary markets, but a something that I think, especially for new investors coming in, there a lot of people get the idea that, well, let me go where there is no competition, right? Let me find a market that is untouched, and I'll be the only person playing in that playground, right? And it turns out that actually often doesn't work very well. You need to show there needs to be wholesaling activity, because there needs to be buyers looking to buy in that market, and there just needs to be a space for in an existing distressed property market for you to take advantage of, right? So it's that secondary market. You do have to be careful with that. Like, it's not that there's no activity, it's just maybe less competition than you would find in like one of the primary Phoenix markets, for instance.
For sure. So obviously, you know about the market map, which is a tool that we have that
Mhm.
identifies like the best zip codes, counties, and neighborhoods just based off investor activity. So the way that we do this is like, if you look at a market, you're essentially saying these are the active investors based off linking entities and signing numbers of entities. And anytime they're buying either 2 or more transactions in a 6-month period, or their linked together transactions are more than 2 transactions in a given period, we count that as an investor transaction. So
Okay.
typically, when there is at least 5 to 10 deals a month in a market, you can actively wholesale there. There's just going to be a very few amount of people that are actually buying there.
Yeah.
So from our perspective, that's kind of like the baseline. Anything that's less than 5 deals a month is probably a no-go if you're just wholesaling. But on the other
Yeah.
side, we have people who like have a ton of buying power and they don't really care about wholesaling that much. They'll just launch a tertiary market as an example, use their own cash to
Mhm.
close, and they're very successful because of the saturation levels being so low.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious, when you have investors coming to you guys, because you have so much ability just via the tools that you have to really set pretty in-depth market analysis before you ever make a phone call or before you ever send a text message. So what's your kind of get started, not necessarily get started with the platform flow, but like from a best practices perspective, what are the best practices that you kind of lay out for people coming in to do that market analysis or take advantage of those tools?
Man, a lot of the things that you can think about there.
Big question. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, I love it. So the way I break it down is I like to go with exit strategy first. So in my mind, and huge grain of salt here, like I think there's 4 big categories of
Mhm.
like general exits that you have. It's either a flip, a wholesale, you're buying to buy and hold for a rental portfolio, or you're doing creative financing.
Yeah.
So from those four, I think that there are markets that are better for those things than others. And I'm talking specifically about, like, I would say flips versus rentals. So if you have a very explicit goal with one of those two things, that's kind of like the first driving force. And to give like a very practical example of that, when you're looking at like building a rental portfolio, you're not going to go to like Sacramento, California, more than likely,
Mhm.
because the median home values are so high. It's not very affordable, things like that.
Right.
But if you're looking to build a rental portfolio, you may go to somewhere Midwest in Ohio, because the median home values are like 2 to 300,000. So we see a lot of people, because we have a lot of data on where the biggest portfolios are and like gross rent yields and things like that. So Midwest, anything sub like 400,000 is going to be like a good area to like have a rental portfolio. So that's kind of the first thing. It's like, what's your exit strategy going to be? From there, I think it's kind of like doing a very honest review of yourself, as far as like what's your risk tolerance, as far as like your
Mhm.
marketing spend and like how experienced you are, generally speaking. Like if you've
Yeah.
never marketed before and you try to, with a limited budget, go to like Atlanta, your odds of success are like sub 1%. And that's probably a little generous, to be honest. So I
Yeah.
would say, based off of like your exit strategies, based off your marketing ability and experience and what your risk tolerance is, I would say that would kind of be my guiding thing. And then more things that are tactical are things like the market map. So it's like, say you're a good profile for like a secondary market, you would probably want to find an area that's somewhere between like 10 and 50 investor transactions a month. And from there, you would know, like, I have a good chance of at least capitalizing on one or two. And a good thing that we've noticed as well, we've never seen anyone have more than 15% market share on a given market. So if there's around 100 deals a month going on, we've never seen anyone have more than 15. And
Yeah.
that's including like the institutional folks, even like Open Door as an example.
Right.
So kind of getting an idea of all those things and reverse engineering like what makes sense for your marketing spend, I think, is the next kind of big step. So what we have seen, anything sub 5,000 is a pretty good cost per acquisition, generally speaking, across the US. Obviously that can creep up to 10,000 if you're in like California. It can creep down to like 3,000 if you're in like a very low median home value market. And if you have enough marketing dollars to sustainably market for at least 3 months to get at least one deal, I think that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the idea of using data segmented by the exit strategy, right? Because I certainly know lots of people, lots of investors that will, after they've had the seller conversation or in the midst of the seller conversation, will decide what the solution is, right? Like, oh, this could be a wholesaling deal. Maybe I'll just pass this off to a realtor friend and get a finder's fee on it. Maybe I'll wholesale, or maybe I'll subject to it. Maybe I'll hold it as part of my portfolio. Like but it's not until they're in the middle of providing solutions to the seller that they actually go through that. What is my exit strategy kind of thought process, right?
Oh
Where
yeah.
if you're building, if you're at the point where you've got enough cash flow that's come in from wholesaling that you're now looking to diversify. I love the idea of saying, all right, so I'm gonna spend some of my text allotment through launch control, and I'm specifically looking for fix and flip properties. Like, I'm gonna buy this, I'm gonna fix it, I'm gonna flip it. So like, we worked with a guy on launch leads that at one point he was in like the San Francisco Bay Area, and he wasn't wholesaling because it was tough because of, like you said, like the Sacramento prices. That's a little north of the Bay Area, but like same problem, right?
Yeah, like a
So
million
he
ish.
was dead center Bay Area, but he was doing fix and flips, and he would do 2 or 3 a year, but his profit on each one was minimum 250K, right? Like,
Yep.
it's they're huge price points on those. So he only needed a couple of deals a year to be running $1 million business, basically, right? So that's an example, I think, of like, you're not going to wholesale. You're not likely to wholesale that market, but if you focus some of your text efforts on finding even one great deal to fix and flip, great, right? Or if you want to get into vacation rentals and you're
Yeah.
texting in an area around like a lakefront area near, an hour away from where you live, and that there's an active and profitable rental market, then maybe you're spending some of your texting or or data calories there, but knowing that you're going into those conversations with no intention of wholesaling. You're just portfolio building, you know?
Yeah. No, I love that. The one of the things too is like I think a lot because this kind of touches a little bit on what you were saying with like every single market has different like segments of exit strategies as well. So like there's going to be pockets that there's a ton of rentals there. So good metrics that we've found as well is when you take the median home value of the general county. So for nice round math, we can say it's 100,000, which obviously is low, but will be simple to explain. So when we have seen that 20% of that median home value or below the median is generally a good rental area. So basically anything
Ah,
that is like 20% of the median, so 20,000, so 80,000 or below, almost every time is a rental portfolio area. And you could break that down by the zip code or by the neighborhood. And
yeah,
then vice versa, anything that is 20% above the median is always a flipping area because typically it doesn't make a lot of sense to hold rentals there. And that's not to say that there's not any rentals there, but generally speaking, that is the primary exit strategy.
yeah,
And another good rule of thumb that we look for is anything that's between 30 to 40% ownership from like renters versus owners in a given area. Anything between that is almost for sure a rental area as well. And anything outside
yeah.
of that is going to be a rental or sorry, a flipping pocket.
Yeah, and with that kind armed with that kind of information, there's your marketing can become very, very focused, which,
Yes.
like I said, that's gonna take that outreach to discovery ratio and shrink it way, 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 way down. So you mentioned zip codes and even like all the way down to neighborhoods. Right. So if
Hmm.
you are sending a text message out and you can specifically say that something like, I haven't had any luck on MLS, but I'd really love to buy a place in Oak Ridge Estates. Are you looking to sell, or anybody, in the neighborhood looking know of anyone in the neighborhood looking to sell, right? Like you're taking that approach of very specifically looking in that area, then that can be impactful. And then if you are, let's say you are looking for to set up a rental portfolio in a specific area, it's you may find that the people that you're talking to, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree, aren't at that point of within the distressed sort of profile where they need to make a decision. So it may take a bit of convincing. It may take a few more touch points to get them to really engage in that off market conversation. And if so, the drip automation function and launch can be extremely powerful because you can take over even like a 3 to 6 month period. You can drip value and drip opportunities where you're not just asking, do you want to sell? Do you want to sell? Do you want to sell? But, profiling why you're investing in a specific neighborhood, or profiling, someone that you recently worked with and how that worked out really well for them.
Yeah.
Like using
Like case
using
studies
these a bit.
almost.
Exactly. So using like case studies and testimonials and showing from a seller perspective really how it can benefit them instead of it just being a deal for you, and use that to your advantage. That can equal, on a monthly basis, you've got another person coming around. How big, how much cash you have on hand to grow that rental portfolio, that's your only real limit.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. So a thing that I think people don't like to talk a lot about, or
Mhm.
just because it's not a very sexy topic, but a lot of people don't really think about like cash conversion cycles in their marketing. So it's like, hey, if you send out like I don't know 10,000 texts in a month, it's probably going to take I don't know. You probably know this better than I do, but like 3, 6, 7 months to like of cultivating leads to actually get like legitimate opportunities. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people don't really think about that and how like different marketing channels on outbound versus inbound, like how they affect your marketing cycles and like what your cash needs to be. So to kind of build on earlier when we were talking about like the getting started plan, you should it's so important that you think about cash conversion cycles like with your actual like marketing budget and allotment. And if you like just deploy all of your marketing dollars in the first 2 months, it's going to be probably low odds that you see a lot of results because you need to be able to do it sustainably for like 6 to 9 months, in my opinion. And it could be like less. And obviously, you may get some that are much faster and things like that. But this is just like general good marketing practice that I've seen work pretty well too.
Yeah, a lot of times when you're working with providers, whether it's launch control or DataFlik, like there can be this mentality of it's like this just something you plug in real quick, right? See if
Hmm.
it works.
Silver
And the
bullet.
reality, yeah, exactly. And the reality is what you're doing, if you're really going into this, right? Your intention is not to just get a little bit of extra cash flow over the course of the year. That you and I talked about this pre-show. Like if your only goal is to do 2 wholesaling deals during the year, you don't need sophisticated systems. You don't need to be tracking
Hmm.
cash conversion metrics if you just want to make an extra 40 grand to fund family vacations or whatever, right? But if
Yeah.
you actually want to build out a business, you don't plug in a website for a few weeks and then just ditch it if it doesn't have a lot of lead flow coming in. You don't set up an email system and then just ditch it if after a few weeks. You don't there are these you don't set up a CRM and get your lead flow pipeline set up and then I don't know, a week and a half in or 2 weeks in. You don't do that. You don't unplug those foundational elements of building a business. And in real estate investment, you know, having core marketing channels that you have consistently working month in and month out is as foundational as any of those other things. It needs to stay in place. So the number that we give for people is 90 days, right? 90 days is enough for you to generate, you know, almost daily discovery call conversations to be able to work those conversations. And if you're just getting started in this, get good enough at those conversations to actually get the seller to the point of being willing to sell. And then
Hmm.
giving yourself time to run through the transaction coordination and dispo process so that you can actually profit from that deal and then turn around and have more deals in your pipeline that you're now able to close. But you can't turn that faucet off because when you do, you're starting from zero. The idea is that with foundational marketing, every time you close a deal, there's another in the wings. Close a deal, there's another in the wings. So, and you can scale marketing up, right? You can start with text engagement through launch control, which is the lowest barrier to entry in terms of cost. But we openly encourage people, when you have the cash flow, try some direct mail, try some PPC ads, funnel both of those back into text so that you always have text as an open channel. But you have to have these foundational kind of marketing channels. And in terms of REI, a lot of that often is going to be outbound, and you can't
Yep.
do outbound without good data. So it again is a foundational element that you really have to have.
Yeah, so like with the data side, the whole goal of like everything we're trying to produce is like you can use this in every like facet of marketing. So there's like the outbound element of like calling and texting. There's the kind of inbound outbound hybrid of like direct mail where it's like we're explicitly targeting these people. And then even on like the inbound side, this is definitely like a more higher level like investor, I would say, but we have a lot of people taking our data and then building custom audiences inside of like Meta and Google and things like that
Mm,
because it kind of builds that omni-channel presence. So the way that they do it is they'll upload a list and they'll do direct data targeting and they're explicitly marketing to those people. And then they'll also build lookalike audiences of that segmentation. And we see anything from like 50-50 as far as the ad spend to like 30-70 with like the data taking 70% of it and then 30% going to like a lookalike. And the people who like dominate the most, I think that I've talked to personally are like ones that have like 3 to 5 channels. And obviously the
yeah.
more is better, but these are the people that are doing like 10 plus, a month consistently is the big thing, I think. And the most extreme case I would say is like someone that's doing like 40 deals a month that we know of. And they're doing, I think, like 8 different marketing channels. And it's directly proportional to the amount of exit strategies that you have and the amount of like marketing channels that you consistently do. I think is like the true test to like how well you're going to perform over like years.
Yeah, and when you get to that point, right? Like those people that have 8 channels. They
Yep.
at that point, they've got very sophisticated systems
Hmm.
and they've got teams in place. So they've got it set up so that those leads are coming in from different places. Hopefully they're re-engaging through text and they have that pipeline open as well, and that's part of they're set up not only on outbound, but also in like post discovery call engagement, or throughout the entire, disposition process, all of it, right? But
Yep.
the point is that they have leads funneling in. They have teams that are then working those leads, teams that are capable of actually dispoing properties and running through contracting and doing all of that. And then again, turning back to those systems. So they're only stepping in when it's at a high level with a particular deal, or in order to just expand the infrastructure of the team. So it's not like they're juggling 8 different
Yeah.
setups. They've they've maximized it so that they have their time back, and they're doing 40, 50, 100 deals.
Yeah. I mean, I think that team has 25 employees. Like this is
Right.
like a legit. This is like what I think most people strive to do. Just very few like have the acumen to like build a business like that. Because like most people, I mean, I would say 80% ish of people don't want that because it's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
completely
yeah.
different beast entirely.
Yeah, I
So
mean, we often talk about generational wealth in REI, right?
mhm.
But there's a lot of people that get into this for lifestyle reasons, right? They're not
Oh yeah,
actually looking to get wildly wealthy or to, fund multiple generations. They just don't want to work a 9 to 5. That sucks. They want to have, and so there's, I talked to David Richter about this, of like having these buckets that you set up, and just having these breakpoints where you've gotten up to 5 deals, uh, even a year, right? Like,
yeah.
do I want to make the leap to 10 or the leap to 20? Okay, here's what I'm going to need to do that, right? Like, to have these kind of have it stage gated, basically, on how you're going to scale up. And what what I think is really interesting about, working with a company like DataFlik and working with a company like Launch early on, is, advice that I think is good advice that I've gotten from really successful investors, is, even if you're small, act big, think big, right? Like, have really great market analysis, even if you're only looking to even if you're just starting on building up your business. Like, get in the best practice of doing really great market analysis. Get in the best practice of having like a really fine-tuned seller conversation process. Figure out, what your CRM is going to be, at least in the beginning. It doesn't have to be some Salesforce backed kind of big thing, but have a CRM that you're going to use. But have the a scaled down version of the infrastructure that 25-person team has, so that when you do get to the point where you're like, you know what, I'm going to outsource my text engagement to launch leads. I don't want to do that. I don't have the bandwidth for that. I need to focus on profit driven activities. You can do that, right? We have a partnership. We work with New Western for people to be able to disposition a higher volume of deals in their core markets. And
Mhm.
so, if they want to start setting up that pipeline, and being able to uh, partner up with someone that can help them turn over those properties, then they can. But they have the infrastructure set up so that they can, for every person that they bring on, person 1, person 2, person 20, person 25, that person is filling a role that they no longer have to, because they've got the infrastructure in place.
I think a lot of like what really drives like a super high quality business, whether it's in real estate or anywhere else, is like nailing fundamentals. And it's not a
Yeah,
very sexy concept, but it's like the bigger companies just do the fundamentals and the easy stuff really well and do it at scale. And that's like the hard thing. So it's like when you're starting out, like market analysis, like I think a lot of people, even like the bigger folks, like don't really do that. They just kind of blindly like test and things like that. And a lot of the stuff like the market map that we have, there's not really like a tool that's like comparable to it. And
yeah,
that's like the whole reason that we created it. Is we're like, why are people doing this? And when we first started, like back in like 2022, 2023, of like really like selling hard, we were like, why are you picking this market? And they're like, well, like, I've heard it's good, but that's like, it's all emotionally like felt, but there's no real like data to support that.
yeah,
And that's like a good example of like, it's not very difficult to like I think you could spend like couple hours and like know like 5 markets that you want to test with like good reason as to why you want to do so. And
Yeah.
it's just like a fundamental thing that people don't do. But the difference in like that versus like, a team of 25 is like they're just doing more of the fundamentals just with more people, really, I think.
Yeah, exactly. They're just subject matter experts at that point, right? You've got acquisitions people that are just great on the phone, and they get the deals teed up. You've got a transaction coordinator that's literally all they do, right? Like
Yep.
they're just doing that all day long, and it's a job you don't want, but they like that heads down
I
kind of
like
work.
it. Yeah.
So you give that work to them, right? Like, when you have those subject matter experts in place as you scale up, then yeah, again, like your job, you're just doing macro level planning. You're not in the weeds, which is great.
I love it.
Um, so for you guys have a really sort of not a really sort of you have a very sophisticated approach to data, and something we struggle with a little bit at Launch Control. I'm sure you guys struggle with the same. Is the average person that uses Launch Control uses it at about 20% of its efficiency. I'm just
Yep.
pulling that number out. It's not a proven number, but it's
No,
like,
that's a good guess, I think, for
about
anything.
20, right, about 20% of its efficiency. And then on the launch lead side, where, we're running our own software, running our own system, the effectiveness goes up almost exponentially, right? It's the conversion ratio is much, much, much higher because they're using all the bells and whistles, right? So for you guys, you know, what's your process in like helping people understand the true value and the true kind of best possible use case for the product?
Yep. So for us, everyone gets a dedicated customer success manager, and that's just for the AI data. So this is like
Mhm.
the enterprise, like 500 to 2,500 a month, depending on the county that you're in. And the reason that we do that is we're trying to train our CS team to be as good as like the founders are, or like some of the top investors is kind of the logic there. And this is explicitly for marketing. Like they're not going to teach you how to do acquisitions, as an example. So not a coach, but they're really, really good at understanding like our data and like what works with it. So that's kind of like the first like cornerstone. And that's kind of what we also try to do as far as like standing out, because there's a lot of like data providers that just kind of give you the data. And what we have found through a lot of pain and trial and error is that if they do not have explicit direction in what works versus doesn't, they don't really see a lot of good results. So that's kind of
Mhm.
the first piece. The second piece is we're setting up a lot of partnerships with people that are really, really good in their respective sector. So an example would be like launch control. You guys know a lot more about texting and you guys have enormous amounts of data of what works versus doesn't. Whereas, we have ideas of what works versus doesn't on texting. So we're trying to build like a partnership network of like, these are all the people who we feel are really good at their respective domains. And we push them to those people. And that could be anything from like VAs to cold calling to softwares to pretty much anything that you would need to facilitate running a good real estate business. And then kind of like that last piece is more of like the tactical things as far as like tracking with our actual data. So the AI product has 32 distressors that are attached to it.
Hmm.
And which from our perspective, like this is everything that we could physically fit in and that made sense. And then that all filters down into one score. So the people who do really, really well are the ones that know exactly everything that has to do with when a lead comes in, what lists are performing, what lists are performing based on the neighborhood or the zip code. And they have VAs actually coming in every time a lead comes in, and they pretty much put all that information in their CRM. So like their tracking is on like a completely different level than what most people are like willing to actually do. And that's not only happening on like the backside as far as acquisitions, but it's also happening on the marketing side. They run split tests as well for things like direct mail versus like calling versus texting. We have some
Mhm.
people who say like, we split tested like actually, in our messaging for our marketing saying like, hey, we saw you may have like inherited a property versus like just a blanketed approach. And like sometimes it works better in some areas versus other. And like the amount of like granularity that you can have is virtually limitless. And the
Yeah.
people who are trying to always like strive to to lace that into their marketing and their like SOPs and processes for the business, those are the people who destroy, in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the things that, as we're full disclosure for everyone, DataFlik is a partner of Launch Control. We work together. One of the things that we should probably look into is taking some of that testing you said of like direct mail versus calling versus texting, and
Hmm.
seeing what the results are when if we have combined efforts in those spaces, right?
Yeah.
So if someone is, let's as an example, like a direct mail piece is due to arrive in a few days, and they send a text that says, hey, I just sent you a direct mail piece. It's a bit of information about my company, whatever that they're knowing, just to like let people know that's coming, and that text channel is open if they want to engage via text, right? Or if they've run through calls and they're using Launch as a way to say, hey, I just tried to call you, let you know this is also like an open line to me if text is an easier way to communicate, and you're using it as a follow-up, right? So do
Yeah.
those combined efforts produce more results? In my experience, they do, but I'd love to have some partnership related data that shows that.
Yeah. So again, not a very like sexy topic, but like attribution analytics is
Mhm.
a super interesting concept in the fact of like how many like touches did a record or a lead get across the entire journey of their marketing. So an
Yeah,
example would be like maybe they got X amount of mail pieces and X amount of texts, and they got some cold call, and maybe on those data audiences, as far as the Meta and Google like lookalikes and direct targeting, like how many like impressions did they get? And then when you bundle all that together, you can kind of like reverse engineer a little bit better of what you're trying to get done. I do not know a single company that has like mastered that. But
yeah,
in my opinion, the people who are striving towards at least trying to make that happen are going to be the ones that do the best in this industry long term. And I think most people who'd be listening to this, I would imagine, if you're willing to listen to a podcast about this, are pretty serious and like want to build at least a sustainable business. Maybe that's a one man band all the way to a 25-person company. Well, we'll probably have a range of people who want to do both of those. But it's like coming back to that piece about fundamentals is everything, and
yeah.
trying to strive towards doing that is should be your goal, in my opinion.
Yeah, and on that kind of note, right? We talked about like even if you're small, think big, right? Like having those
Yeah.
fundamentals in place, and those people that are running a 25-person shop, right? Like one and or a Fortune 500, corporate structure.
Yep.
One of the things
Institution.
that they, yeah, one of the things they all do on an institutional level is hire for the things that either they're not good at or they don't want to do, right?
Yep.
And so what's great about, you guys are training your CS team up to become absolute experts. We really rely heavily on our CS team at launch to be text engagement experts and to be able to really help investors, no matter
Yeah.
what size they are, stage they're at in their business, to set up scalable systems. So you've got, if you really lean into the providers that you're working with, you've got subject matter experts in place. Like you don't
Exactly.
have to watch 40 hours of YouTube videos to figure out the data game. You just have to go to your team and talk to them and tell them what you want to accomplish, and they'll help walk through the best practices. If you really want to engage via text marketing, and you don't have to, again, watch 40 hours of YouTube videos figuring out the best ways to engage with people via text. You just have to talk to our team and let them
Yeah.
guide you. And you lean on that subject matter expertise, and you put all of your focus on calls with sellers, which is what you really want to do anyway, right?
The highest leverage activities, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, exactly. So you mentioned, I mean, just for people that aren't familiar with the AI component of what you guys are offering, could you give a little more detail on that?
Yeah, I'll kind of give you a high level overview of like our product suite. So what we're striving to do as far as a company is to have every facet of marketing covered the best that we can. And if we don't do it, we have partners that do it. And that's like the entire goal of like data is the backbone, and all of our products are completely centered around that because we feel like we're really good at that, and it's our unfair advantage. So as far as the data products first, we have soon to be two today. So one is our AI product, which is our flagship stuff. That's an exclusive based licensed for a county. So 1 to 5 people will get that market, depending how big it is. Example would be Los Angeles County, which is the largest county in the US, would have 5 people, but rural county Texas would have 1 person. Everything there, we score from 0 to 100. The higher that score is, the more likely they are to sell to an investor. And the way that that is broken up is essentially anything above 50, we're covering 60 to 70% of the investor transactions that happen in a market on the list that we actually provide to you. And the way that we construct that investor model is it's broken up into 3 different categories. We have, are they just likely to sell at all? Are they someone who is sold to an investor or look like it from a lookalike or demographic point of view? And then the last piece is what would be the price they would actually sell at? So we call that like our discount model. So if a property is worth 100,000, we're trying to make our best guess of what that property would actually sell for. And if that number is a lower number, so like 80,000, then that would move up on our list. So all those combine together into one unique score. And then we have those 32 distressors that I mentioned, and that is everything that you could possibly imagine. So it's like everything from pre-foreclosure all the way to credit to what someone has inquired on a short-term like payday loan, as an example, and kind of everything in between that. We funnel all that up into one thing that we call the investor score, and that's our AI product. On the other side of this, we have something called Stack Niche, and that is, think about it as courthouse data of the best, most efficient distressors that are all focused on very low record counts, but very high transaction counts every month. So we're trying to give you a starting point, and that's typically $100 to $500 a month. But most people start with, and then they kind of upgrade into the AI product once they've like gotten a little more sophisticated in their marketing. And then we have 2 other sides, aside from data, that is our agency arm. So we do like PPC and just digital marketing for people. And then on the other side of that, we also have a paper lead that's in beta. So that's everything from you're just starting out, you just want to get leads on autopilot, and you're starting to get into the data game would be an example of that.
Yeah, it's a great setup because at Launch Control we have different subscription levels, and they tend to mirror how people scale up, right? So you're coming in on our light package, you're probably just getting started, you're looking to build some stability with your deal flow. If you're on our core package, you're most likely probably have a VA, maybe 2, and you're looking to outsource and scale up a bit. And then if you're on a pro or enterprise, you're running one of those big shops where it's just institutional, foundational, right?
Volume. Yep.
Right. And so you can leverage a lot of what you guys offer in different ways, also depending on what level you're at in your process. So like if you're somebody, let's just pick the center point, right? You're in the middle at launch, or you're a core subscriber. You've gotten enough deal flow coming in that you need to free up your time for those, what did you call them, high leverage activities?
Yep.
Yeah. So you need to free up your time for those high leverage activities. So, it might make sense to incorporate a pay per lead model because you're going to jump straight to conversation, right? Straight to discovery.
Exactly.
It might make sense to outsource your text marketing through launch leads so that you can funnel that down just to discovery call ready leads, instead of having to send the batches and work the leads and filter responses yourself. You just outsource that side of it. So whether you're looking to outsource small segments of it as a way to free up your time for profit driven or high leverage activities, or if you're just looking for additional income streams as a big shop, and you've got the budget to spend on something like PPL leads, right? Like, and you've got the budget for it, and you want to use that as part of adding a new marketing funnel, that you can do that. But it's really a question of where you're at in your business and whether it is it's a move that frees up time, adds profit, or both.
So there's one of our co-founders, his name's Rami. Rami talks about this a lot, where he's like, there's personas of people in this industry, and they're all very different. Mm-hmm. So like he has an analogy where like you have people who are marketers, and then you have people who are flippers or investors. And usually like you're somewhere, it's a spectrum, but you have people who like have no desire to do record management and to hire a bunch of VAs and to manage data. And then you have people who like only want just like leads on autopilot. So like your all's done for you service or PPL makes a ton of sense because you just give them that and they just receive like opportunities only. And then you have on the other side of this where these people are really good marketers and they want to control every part of the process and
Yeah.
they want to build SOPs and things like that. And they're maybe not the best at flipping actual like assets and things like that. So it's funny to see like the range of it. And that's like why we created kind of like an option for everyone because everyone's marketing needs are very like different and their goals are very different.
Yeah, and it's just proof that there's no one way to do it, right? There's lots of different routes you can take to success. And it really just kind of depends on what fits your profile, right? Like what you want to do. So it does help. It's one of the reasons why I think it's great to have networks. Like we're relaunching a big community at launch. I know you guys have, some great networking opportunities within your user base as well. And a good reason to really leverage those as well is just like walking in, you might not know what your profile is, right? Because if this is a brand new business for you, or you've been doing it for less than 18 months or whatever, like you might not know walking in like what you're really going to love doing and what you're going to hate doing. And it
Oh yeah.
helps talking to people from different profiles and just vetting it out and then like, you know what, I think I just want the leads to come straight to me. I don't want to do the work. I don't want to, like if
Mhm.
you know that, then you can take direct action towards that, right? So it does help to have those networking connections.
Totally agree.
Yeah. All right. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. Anything else that we didn't cover, DataFlik related, that you wanna get out there for the people?
No, I think one thing we can do that I don't think had a chance to talk about, but we can put in the description of this, like where they can go in and just download a sample of the market map for their area, so
Yeah.
that they can do some of the things that we were talking about. So it's like a lot of people don't really know what their market looks like, and this will, I think, show you a lot of unique things that you probably had no idea about, and you can maybe change and take some nuggets from that for your own marketing.
Yeah. No, that'd be fantastic. Let's make sure that we do that. All right. Well, Ty, really appreciate the time. That was great. Always an amazing resource to talk all things data. And yeah, for anybody listening, if you're working with Ty and his team and you want to come over to launch, we'll work directly with our CS team and get you really synced up with both systems and vice versa. If you're working with launch now and you want to implement DataFlik data, again, it's just about syncing up the subject matter experts on both sides, Ty's team and my team, and have them work together to get you the best possible results.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. All right. Talk soon. Thanks.
Yeah, bye.